There we go. All right, folks. Sorry about that. I don't know why we had a technical glitch there with StreamYard. Please let me know if you guys can see me or hear me on the side chat. I'll wait for a second here. See if anybody's responding. Thank you, Tim. Yes, I called IT and they told me that I should turn off the computer and turn it back on again. So I don't know what happened there. The screen went blank and then it was totally black on my display screen. So, well, anyway, we're here. Welcome everybody to TMI, that's Too Much Information Live with Moondog, where I go over the videos that I posted this week on YouTube and my socials, answer your questions, and give you some background information about them, as well as talk about the projects that I'll be working on. And of course, since I did restart this browser, all of the things that I loaded up to, like my slideshow that I usually share with you, is all wiped out. So I'm going to have to reload all these things. Okay, so we'll start with that. Let me just minimize that screen. And I'll also load up some video files. But let's just start about Aura, and while I'm loading up these video files. So Aura is a online cybersecurity company that I use. And there's a lot of cybersecurity companies out there that offer you VPN services, as well as data broker removal services, spam blockers, credit monitoring. All these different services are offered by different companies that are out there. But Aura is one of the few that bundle all of them together. Plus, they give you $1 million in identity theft insurance, which is really one of the key reasons why you want all this data security, this online security, is to keep people from nefariously opening up credit cards in your name or stealing your identity and getting access to your online presence, or heaven forbid, your financial account. So I recommend Aura, and actually I just found out that that Iron Man is now on the board. Robert Downey Jr. is on the board of Aura, so I think that's super cool. Hey, if he's behind it, why wouldn't you get back, go on a Stark computer system and join up Aura? But no, I'm kidding. I sign up for Aura. I use them. They're great. And if you use my coupon code, my link there, and you can see a QR code that's on there, you will get 14 days of Aura for free. So just go to aura.com/moondog and you will get 14 days of Aura for free. All right. So let us start with the contest that I always have on my show. Let me just double check that the giveaway tool also, it looks like I'm going to have to refresh the page for that giveaway tool. But let me give you our first clue about the prize for today. All right, let me make sure I spell that correctly. All right, so the prize for today is going to be a swag pack from Loophole. So yes, the Loophole, the famous scope company that everybody just loves. They make great stuff, by the way. They make really great scopes. They've been around forever. And one of the few U.S. optics companies out there, based in Oregon, actually, got their start in making surveying optics for surveyors. And they make some of the best scopes out there. Well, I'm giving away 3 of these packs to 3 winners out there who are watching this. So all I have to do is type in the mystery company, and here's the first clue. This computer company's brand name is also a naval flag rank or position. It's a rank between captain and rear admiral. It's often a temporary command title given to a captain who is commanding a flotilla or a squadron of ships. So this company has the same name as this military rank. So that's your early bird clue for those of you who joined up early. So just put hashtag and put in the name, this word, on the side chat, and you'll be automatically entered to win a Loophole swag pack. All right. Let's get into the newest videos I posted up this week. And I was excited to test out this particular scope. This is a 40 power scope from a company that may sound new. It's called TPO, but actually they've been around for a while, but under a different brand name. Sniper is what they've been selling budget scopes under. That is their brand name. But I always thought that was a bit, I don't know, kind of cringy. It's like knife companies with the name Ninja, you know. It's just kind of cheesy to me to name a scope Sniper, or presumptuous or pretentious in any case. But they're going under their actual company name, which is Texas Precision Optics, and they're releasing scopes under the TPO brand name, which I think is a better call. Generally, I could always consider them a budget scope, but in the past when I've tested out TPO scopes, the sharpness of the glass was surprisingly better than I would have given it for the price range of these particular scopes, but they all exhibited pretty noticeable chromatic aberration. That's when you get that kind of purple fringing. That's when actually light, as it's coming through the lenses, starts to separate out into its different colors, like through a prism. That kind of effect, and that causes the image that you're actually seeing with your eye, because all the different colors are splitting up, to be actually a little less sharp than it could be. Well, this newest scope from TPO, formerly Sniper, is a 40 power scope with a street price just under $400, which for a 40 power scope is kind of cheap, suspiciously cheap. And so I wanted to try it out. And this glass actually, it didn't say so in the marketing material, but I suspect it's Chinese ED glass. For the price range, I can't imagine that it's definitely ED glass. I'm pretty sure it's ED glass because the chromatic aberration is almost entirely gone. But I don't think for that price it's Japanese ED glass or anybody else's. So not that Chinese ED glass is bad. They've certainly gotten better, but it's certainly better than they used to be. And as Tim Mooney said, Sniper brand name screams stay away. I'm with you there. Absolutely. And I'm going to load up the video. I'm going to share a short of from that video that I posted up this week. And I'll show you what it looks like from 1400 yards. All right. Looking through the TPO KT at its lowest power of 5 at the peak of Mount Davidson 1400 yards away. And we can compare what we're seeing in the scope versus outside of the scope to see what, if any, color changes, shifts, or brightness changes are occurring. Now what I'm seeing through the glass is a overall good color balance, but a bit of softness around the outer edges compared to the center sharpness. No noticeable chromatic aberration, and you'll usually see that in high contrast areas like where the tree line meets the sky. Now let's bring up our magnification, and with it all the faults in the glass, and we're going to stop about halfway in the scope's magnification range of 20 power here, and that's typically halfway is about the sweet spot for most scopes. And what I'm seeing here is a loss of color, contrast, and a bit of a warmer tint overall, but again, very little, if any, noticeable chromatic aberration. Now let's bring this all the way up to its maximum magnification of 40 power. And wow, okay, that eye box really closed in there, so I have to make a little adjustment to the position of the camera there, because the camera can't automatically shift like our eyes and head can. Now we've lost a lot of light and contrast, but I can easily make out the trail marker sign at the top of the hill there. That is that white object just to the left and above the center crosshairs. And that is about a 3-foot sign on top of a pole, which is a good proxy for an IPSC target at this distance. So yeah, that's the TPO KT 40 power scope for about $400. Now for that price, like I said, there are going to be compromises for any budget scope. And for that one, as you can see, a very tight eye box, very unforgiving eye box. And you saw it there, that sort of black edge that came in. And also it's kind of heavy, but it's an interesting that it came pre-mounted on scope rings, and the front scope ring has a diving board to attach a range finder, or laser range finder, or a red dot, or whatever accessory you want to attach to it. And the turrets are kind of mushy. They still tracked, surprisingly enough. So it returned to, I did a box test on it, and I did an abuse test on it, on the turrets as well. and it still returned to its original 0 point that I started at. So take that for what you will. For that price, if you need a 40 power scope, it's certainly one to consider. And I don't know. Are there any other 40 power scopes in that price range? I don't know of any, but if there are, please let me know in the comments. So that is the TPO scope review that I posted up this Saturday. And I also posted up a second video on my 2A channel, and that I posted up is actually I got the order wrong here. So for the 2A review, 2A channel, I posted up a booth visit with Athlon to show that they showed me their new chrono that's coming out, and it's a Garmin competitor, but the menu screen is much easier to use than Garmin's. It's got about the same size profile, and it's about a couple $100 less. Now, I just found out they told me as recently as last month that they were planning on releasing it in late April, which is why I released this video. I had it automatically set to go out, but as it turns out, it's available for sale on some online retailers, but none of them have gotten shipments of them yet, so they're not shipping yet, which is unfortunate. But for the price, this thing looks amazing. I still haven't gotten one to test out, so I just want to let you know. But this is my first look at their new ballistic calculator chrono, not rangefinder. Their new chrono, and hopefully they'll be getting it soon. And they also, I don't know how much the tariff debacle has delayed shipments of this, as well as changed the price, because I heard that it's gone up about $100 since SHOT Show, but it is what it is. It's still cheaper than the Garmin. So that's here's J Delta commented here. They're sold out. The next batch is the next batch, I think is what I meant to say, is in June. They've been sold out since last month, so I think those listings just say sold out, or at least unavailable. But I don't know, maybe some lucky folks out there were able to get an early batch or not. I don't know. But that's what I heard too, is that they're planning on shipping them in June, hopefully. We'll see how that works out. But I hope to get a hold of one to test out. Now, going back, since we skipped that one frame, the other part of my booth visit with Athlon was to look at their new budget thermals, which are out. And this one is pretty cool, by the way. Let me bring this up onto the screen. Let me load up the video for that. And I was surprised at the price of this new thermal optic. To be quite honest, it's relatively affordable. And to be honest, thermals are not cheap. Maybe they will be. Remember back in the day when night vision was a couple of tens of thousands of dollars. Now you can get at least cheap night vision for like $150 now. I mean, granted, they're not great, but certainly as good as Gen 1 was back 20 years ago. I know that doesn't sound like 20 years ago is a long time, but I'm trying to say here is that things are getting cheaper, and certainly with these thermals, it is quite.
Our thermals have been updated to the Cronus ATS Pro series. The Pro series is going to incorporate ballistics. So if you've got a laser, it's going to show you exactly where to hold over for whatever rifle or bullet combination you put in there. If you don't have a laser, you have the ability to create a custom BDC reticle. So this little guy is the one I really want to show you. It's the 25P 256 sensor, 25P 250. This is the Everyman thermal. We're real excited to launch this one. While these are phenomenal and high performing, the 25P 256 or 250 is going to make this a lot more accessible to the everyman hunter, right? Maybe it's the guy, just weekend warrior, doesn't dive in too deep, but he wants a thermal. This is a great option. The 25P 250 has, just like all of our other thermals, an auto record function. So it's going to detect recoil when you fire, and it's going to record prior to you taking the shot as well as after.
Wow, that's slick. So that is me see if I can load up the other video where it talks about the price. But let me just bring up what the price is on Amazon right now, because I just looked at that. The Athlon 25p thermal. It's like ATS Pro thermal. It is, the ATS Pro thermal is $719 right now. $719 for that thermal, the 25p 250. So yeah, not thousands of dollars anymore. $700. So yeah, they're getting cheaper. They're getting surprisingly cheaper. I don't know how much cheaper they're going to go, but I'm sure they're going to go cheaper. And I hope that YouTube starts dropping. You know, I can't actually show a lot of, if I make reviews of thermal scopes, YouTube will demonetize or restrict the monetization of them. That's just one of their rules, which I don't understand why that is a rule on YouTube, but it is. So anyway, I hope they change that particular rule. And on my Moondog Go channel, I posted up. I post up when I do videos of things that are going on traveling, or things that I do in San Francisco, as well as when I'm traveling. And this last week was Easter week. So, well, we had Easter on Sunday, and before Good Friday, the previous Friday, my particular church invites members of the congregation to give a reflection on the last 7 words of Jesus during the crucifixion. So I was asked to do the first one, to give a reflection on the first one, and I posted up a video of the entire 7 words, or the 7 different reflections on the 7 different sentences, words that he said, not individual words like I. But in any case, I posted up a video of that, and it's a rather long video because there's 7 different people speaking and each giving their own different reflection on a different passage. But I just wanted to post it up that I did. I'm not going to load up the video because it's rather a large file, and I'm concerned about the fact that my screen froze up earlier. Makes me very hesitant to load up a large video file into StreamYard. So I will not do that. But if you're interested, go check it out. I give a reflection on the passage of "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So check it out. Certainly if you're of a spiritual or religious bent, I think or anybody, you'd get something out of that. All right. So this is the section of my show where I ask for your help in one of the new videos that's coming up. And this is going to be on a Miles C laser rangefinder. And I don't know if, are you guys familiar with that brand? Have you guys heard of it before? To be honest, I'd never heard of the brand before I reviewed them. So let me know on the side chat if I totally, dude, you should know Miles C. They make the best stuff. I didn't know. So, but I was very pleased with this particular rangefinder and its performance. I was easily able to range out over a mile distance, which I haven't been able to do on rangefinders that are supposed to be able to range a mile. This one did it without a problem. Even in bright daylight, in a cloudless sky, I was able to, as you can see here on that little thumbnail in the top left, that was the maximum distance of an object that I could laze, which was 2,037 yards. So Delta 22 said, never heard of them either. So yeah, I'm in the same boat. So I'm going to let you take a look at these 2 thumbnails. One, let me know in the side chat which of the 2 images you think is the stronger for a thumbnail image. And the second question I have is, do you have an idea of what I should say in that thumbnail? Now, I could just easily go with "See a Mile" as a headline. But if you have any thoughts as to a good headline, or which of the 2 images do you think would be the better one for me to use as a thumbnail, let me know in the side chat on that. Now, I know that there's some really good laser rangefinders, especially from Loopold and from Vortex and others there. But we're talking a couple $100 that can easily laze out to a mile or more. And but this one's a lot more affordable, still not cheap at a couple of $100. But because to be honest, I've mostly at the range I'm never more than 200 yards away from a target, so I don't really need any of those really high performance ones. I've been getting by on a cheap Gulf rangefinder that I got for like $39, which is fine. I mean, if I'm going to be lasing out a target at 120 yards, that's perfectly within the capabilities. But this one, and those other cheap rangefinders that I've owned that are less than $100, there's no way I'd be able to get anything close to 1,000 yards, much less 2,000 yards with them. And here we go. Here's a headline here. Tim says, I can see for miles and miles. That's good. I'm going to screenshot that. Okay. I'm just looking at the side comments. Evening pick. I'm not going to highlight your last comment because I'm not sure what you said and what that means. But I want to say to highlight some of the folks who are already on the chat. To Michael Dunn, thanks for joining us, and Muhammad, thank you for joining us, and of course we saw Tim earlier. Got JC Justice, Delta 22. C's 33, Tom Burton, and Vadim. So thanks everybody for joining us. And Pick says, yeah, I deleted fat fingered. Yeah, that is a very strange autocorrect that your whatever device you're using said. So in terms of the thumbnails here, I'll move on since we have a special guest and I don't want to take any more time away from him because I think you guys will get a kick out of our guest today. But I want to give you guys another clue in the contest that I'm having. And for those of you who are just joining us, I'm giving away a swag pack from Loopold. That includes a whole set of their decals. I'm giving away, I'm going to be choosing 3 winners today. So all you have to do is put in on the side chat the name of this mystery company. So let me just give you this clue here. This brand started out as an electric typewriter company in Canada in 1958. Then they sold electronic calculators before creating some of the first personal computers like the PET, which I found out was personal electronic transactor, not terminal. I meant terminal, but never mind. But the PET computer in 1977, and in 1980 they released their most affordable PC at the time, the VIC-20, which I actually was the first computer that I got of theirs that I got to get my hands on to use at school. And then their final computers were the Amiga 4000. I think there's some purists or some more knowledgeable folks, but it was one of the Amiga line of computers. It was one of their last computers that came out in the mid 90s. So if you know who this company is, put hashtag and their name into the side chat and you'll be entered into the contest to win that Loopold swag pack. All right, so down the rabbit hole we go. We're going to be talking about the golden age of computers, and that includes the home computers that I forget which computer magazine called the holy trinity of personal computers at the time. These all came out in the mid to late 1970s, and they included the Apple II, the Texas Instruments TRS-80, and the PET. And soon after that, the next year, came out the Atari 800. And for those of you who didn't know, Atari did make computers. In fact, that was my first personal computer, was the Atari 800. And there was also a very short-lived computer. It was, at the time, was marketed as the cheapest personal computer you could buy, was a Timex Sinclair. And that thing was a tiny little thing with, I believe it had like membrane keys on it. but those are the first personal computers way before IBM came out with a PC. Those are the computers that you could buy to have a personal computer at home. Tim Mooney says, I learned BASIC on a pet at school. Yeah, I learned it on a Trash 80. TRS 80, everybody called it the Trash 80. And Tim Mooney said, I owned a pet in 2001, a pet 2001-8. I thought you meant in 2001, like the model in the picture. That is so cool. And to talk about that is my special guest and my friend Scott Robinet. And he's a software developer in Canada. He grew up in Ontario outside of Toronto, where he went to college. And he was the VP of R&D at Network Automation, which in California, before he moved back to Toronto, and where he founded and currently leads this company, Voltaic Solutions, which is an analytics and optimization cloud software company that focuses on the energy industry and energy infrastructure. So I would love to bring onto stage right now my friend Scott. How are you, Scott?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is cool. I was watching the whole video beforehand.
No worries. So how was your screen frozen at the very beginning like mine was?
It was. I was in the process of texting you and telling you that there was just a blank screen when you came back, because I wasn't sure if it was my computer or if it was you. But as soon as you clicked the button, said I'm going to go live, it went black.
Yeah, and then it goes black when like it plays the intro, but then usually it will go to, once the intro it automatically ends, it goes into the screen mode like we're looking at right now. But then it didn't. It was just black. I'm like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier that it was lagging, so because your face was frozen for a second, so I thought maybe it was just lag, but it wasn't.
And during that black screen, did you hear me talking to the screen?
No,
not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going, what the heck's going? Yeah, I was anyway. But we're all, you and I are very familiar with buggy computers.
Oh yeah, I just assumed that it was my fault, because that just seems to be. It's like when I do demos for customers, right? It's works on my machine, and then as soon as you do the demo, it doesn't work. So that's pretty consistent.
Well, I should let's take a step back though. Let's introduce. I gave you that little introduction, but I want to let you introduce yourself, or at least give us some background. You grew up in Canada, just outside of Toronto. Did you grow up in where you live now in Windsor, or?
Yeah, so I grew up in Windsor, so which is right across the river from Detroit. So I was there until I moved to LA when I finished school, so 20 or 21. But the great thing about growing up in Windsor is the running joke is that you're essentially American, because I grew up on American TV, American radio. If you wanted to go see a concert, you would have to go through the tunnel or on the bridge to get to Detroit. I never was a Red Wings fan. I was stuck with the Toronto Maple Leafs on that, but going to Tigers games and all that. So, hanging out at concert venues in Detroit. So when I moved here after coming back from LA and I moved outside of Toronto, I had to actually learn Celsius, because I never talked like that, right? I had to learn the metric system, because aside from school in Windsor, you don't use metric, you use feet and everything else, because we're
okay, and
everything. Yeah, like all of our socket and wrench sets, you're looking at it being like, what the hell is 32 millimeters? Like, so I became more Canadian after I moved here than I was growing up. But yeah,
is that still the case now? If do you see that with folks in Windsor still using like feet?
Yeah, like if you still have a lot of friends in Windsor, and they don't know Celsius, and they don't use metric, or I don't have as much of the Canadian accent, the about like some of my friends do and all that, that you would in growing up in Windsor. So, and it's funny because when I lived in LA for the 10 or 11 years and being around different places for work and all that, it's actually phenomenal how many people know where Windsor is and know of Windsor. And predominantly it's because the legal drinking age in Windsor was 19. So in Michigan, it was 21. So anybody who went to school basically anywhere in Michigan, right? University of Michigan, Michigan State, like the colleges there, whatever, they came to Windsor all the time. we would all get into trouble together in Windsor. So it's not so much the case anymore. Windsor's a little bit fallen on hard times, but like a lot of Windsor was like Detroit. It was the automotive capital of Canada. So when I was growing up, everybody, my dad and a lot of other people in Windsor were factory workers. You either worked for GM or you worked for Ford or you worked for Chrysler. And any of those big three had multiple plants in Windsor. Tool and die was a big thing. So, when I was growing up as really a computer nerd, I was way outside the circle of people a lot of people were kind of, I'm just going to go to a factory job and, that's what I'm going to do in Windsor. Even though all of our parents were warning us not to do that.
So even then they saw the writing on the wall.
Oh yeah. And even then it's, I know this isn't the topic of the conversation, but even then it's very, very cyclical, right? So when times are good, they're really good. And then when a recession would hit, or when for whatever reason people aren't buying cars, it's everybody in the city gets laid off at the same time, because it wasn't like just GM lays off, like everybody does. And then the knock-on effects of that. So even as far as having a consistent career path of being able to make a consistent living was questionable even then. I mean, there was a huge recession in the 80s. When was that? 84 to 86, I think. Sometime in that period.
It was
maybe even later.
Well, for the US, it was a little bit earlier, because it was like from like 80 to 83, I think
that was probably it, because it was the same in Windsor, and that really is where I think a lot of our parents were like, hey, maybe the idea of having a job for life in the automotive industry that they were sold on probably wasn't actually going to be a reality for much longer. So my dad was super grateful, my dad, to this day, because he was the one, my dad was a technophile as well. Super science fiction nerd, Trekkie. So he got me to be a Trekkie, all that stuff. So he was always really into these new computers that were coming out. And he really saw this as being like, and this is obviously before the internet, but he saw these things as being like this is the future. Like these things are going to run the planet, even before AI. They're gonna be. This is where everything is going to. These are all the jobs are going to be. Everything's going to be revolving around these things. So he exposed me to them at a really early age, and I'm really glad he did. And I fell in love with kind of like Tim said. The first computer I really got exposed to was a PET, and that's what I started coding on. Basic, if you can call that coding, I guess you can. It was kind of something that I've been doing ever since. So,
yeah. Now, did your father? What part of the line did he work on, or what kind of work did he do at the factory?
So he worked for some of the feeder plants that fed the larger ones in Windsor. So I'm trying to remember. He actually first started at Champion Spark Plug, which had a huge plant in Windsor, literally making spark plugs, and then during the recession, he got laid off there, and he ended up getting a job working at another plant called Fabco that made radiators. And then Champion ended up hiring him back to make more spark plugs. And then they signed the NAFTA agreement, and that changed a lot of stuff. So within the next 5, 6, 7 years, Champion moved all their production to Mexico.
Of course.
Fabco moved all the production to Mexico. Because not to get political, but if you can pay somebody in Mexico to do something that a union job is getting paid $33 an hour in 1989 to do, which is insane, right?
Yeah.
It's an insane amount of money to make to be working, doing what my dad was doing, at least. That changed the landscape. So at that point, he ended up doing a couple other factory jobs, and then had to take an early retirement. But during that time, my dad had a mobile disc jockey service, which he was also using to help pay the bills. So I was exposed to a lot of music in that as well.
So did he have like the whole thing, hauling the lights and everything else to events?
Yeah. So he had. Why not? Let's go down that road. he would play music for, because it's a whole different world back then. It seems like it was so far away now, but he would get hired to do music for banquets, predominantly bowling banquets. I don't know if that was a big thing elsewhere, but
I'm sure. I mean, from what I understand, that part of the country, it definitely must have been, because that was like the I'm thinking of like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and Home Alone, and
yeah, real big, probably real big in the Midwest for sure. Which Windsor, Detroit, definitely we consider ourselves to be part of the Midwest, right? So really big into bowling banquets, playing euchre, all that kind of stuff.
So it's not when I heard mobile DJ, the first thing that came to mind was your proximity to Detroit was techno. But
no, I got introduced to that after moving to LA, which I was actually ashamed of, because I ended up turning into a really big fan of techno, and then finding out like 8 years after the fact that Detroit had a massive techno scene in these huge abandoned buildings that I could see from our side of the river. That'd be like, man, it would be amazing to go into that old Grandin Trunk Railway abandoned massive structure where, Carl Craig was playing, massive raves. And I was like, I had no idea. I probably could hear across the street, but I didn't know what was going on there. So that was a bit of a shame, a little bit late to that party. But no, my dad was, he would do weddings and banquets and, that kind of stuff. But
respectable DJing for that.
That's right.
For that time.
Hit the tie on and stuff, literally, but he had 4, 5, 6 different sets of maybe even more of like cabinet speaker with a subwoofer, a tweeter, and a mid-range in it, two turntables and a microphone. He literally had 2 turntables and a microphone, and different sets of these, a mixer, an amplifier. And then back in the day, crates and crates of 45s in milk crates. And
45s.
Yeah, and we would have him. I would go with him and set up the equipment, because he usually Friday, Saturday was really the only time that these things were going on. But we would load up the minivan or the van, the Econo line, with this stuff and go from place to place and go in there and lug the speakers in there and wire them up and wire the amps and the turntables and the mixers and all that, and make sure that it all worked. And then my dad or one of the other DJs that I would go and play music, extra fee for dinner music if you wanted music played while you were eating dinner.
Okay.
And yeah, he did that for at least 10 years. So, and then, the 45s transitioned into cassettes. So he started dragging cassette players, and then, the iPod pretty much destroyed mobile disc jockey. Well, actually, even before that, we ran into issues with the recording RCA.
The CDs?
There was like the Recording Institute, because there was a loophole in copyright law that would allow mobile disc jockeys to basically take a cassette and make multiple copies of the song. So you only had to buy one cassette, and then you could like duplicate it.
Okay.
And the Recording Industry of America clamped down on that hard. It was like, yeah, you can't do that. Like, if you're going to have 8 sets of mobile disc jockey equipment, you have to buy 8 copies of the yeah, right.
So Tim Mooney posted up a comment. 45, is that like a CD?
I don't know how many of you on the chat here watching this have kids that are late teens. I know Tom and I do early teen or whatever, teenagers.
Yes.
And the whole rage now is, my daughter has a record player with 33s, right? Actually, we got a gift from you, the record player, and they're repressing records now. They're all warped to hell. They're all horrible quality, but it's such a massive throwback to be going to thrift stores, and they've got Engelbert Humperdinck albums that they're trying to sell you for like $35.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. So we told my dad, as usual, we're just like, geez, Dad, like you should have kept like all these crates. They'd be like worth money now. My dad was like, they're useless, like, right? But he had, kind of circle back. He one of the differentiators, as we would call them now, that my dad's business had is he had this thing called a request list, and if we want, I can run this thread all the way through all the computers that we had.
So did
We
you?
had this big request list, and it had a thing on it that you could write the numbers on, and you would hand that to the DJ, and the DJ would know what the audience wanted to hear. And like any good DJ, you're like, yeah, sure. But at least it gave the audience an idea that they were somehow involved in what was going to go down at the during the event, as far as what music they were going to hear. But
So that's how you did that request list. You actually physically handed that out like on a clipboard or something or was it a book?
No, it was a crazy operation, man. Like my dad was a hustler. He looking back on it, he had it was a legal size sheet of paper, double sided, and in the late 70s, early 80s, he had a typewriter, electronic typewriter, but it was a typewriter, and he would type out in really the smallest font that he could find on these, or the smallest typing, I guess you can get on a typewriter, all the singles that he had, or cassette singles, with a number. So everything from ABBA to,
oh man, that must have been a process, because like
it was a brutal process. And I think the way that it's all kind of coming back to me now. I think the way that he did it originally was because you couldn't obviously do it sideways. So he would do them in strips and have to do them all in on the typewriter in strips. He would cut them out and he would glue them in columns onto the
wow,
right, and then flip it.
Okay.
And then he would take it to a printer, and the printer would run them off on bright yellow paper with a little bar with an empty start on the right-hand side. And whenever my dad would get, whatever, 100, 200, 300 of these things, he would enlist the whole family to sit down and take like a perforator with a ruler, and we'd run it just like the way that Italians would make sauce. We would like run this perforator up this sheet of paper so that someone could write onto the sidebar the numbers, and then, bend it back and forth and tear it off.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And like hand it in. But when, every 3, 4, 6 months, we would have to get new 45s to stay on top of the pop scene or whatever.
Yeah.
And if it was a particularly good year, like whatever, like 1984, for example, or, 1982, he would have to take these things, use whiteout, line it back up and type over it, and then re-put it back in and go get it all printed out again.
At that point, didn't you have like a computer word processor or he still did everything on a typewriter?
So he's still doing everything on a typewriter, because even then, when I first got introduced to the Commodore PET, which was at our school, I remember his name. His name was just Baron. He was the teacher there. I don't even know how he got his hand on one, because Windsor wasn't exactly like, it wasn't Toronto. I mean, not that Toronto is, but Windsor wasn't necessarily we were middle class, right? It wasn't like a well-to-do area or anything like that. So the schools weren't like top of the line or anything. They were fine. But to get a computer in there in like 1981 would have been insane. But somehow he got one in there. And I fell in love with it, started learning how to code it, and had a little cassette deck on right to load your things in there, type in, I think it was like type in load something, start on a one, whatever, and go, and press, and you get a little prompt that says press play on the player, and you have to press play. And, God forbid you don't stop it at the wrong place or something like that, or the tape locks up, because then you just wasted your 20 minutes of load time to load up Miner 49 or whatever game it was. And that was the teacher would let my dad bring it home on weekends and on long weekends, so we could geek out on it.
Oh, you're lucky. I mean, how many kids were there in the class? You're the only one who wanted to bring it home to
Oh yeah, the other ones couldn't have cared less. I mean, this is like I'm like grade 1, so I think I'm like 6 or 7 years old. And I don't even know. I mean, I guess it was just meant to be, but the rest of them weren't really interested in it. Like, to them, it was like one of those old Merlin devices. Like, they had no concept that this thing was badass, that it was that it did more than just put things on a screen. Like, I think to them, that's really what it looked like. It was just,
what were the games aside from Miner 49er? I mean, that was the thing that hooked me, was like, oh, this is cool. There's games I could play on a computer.
I don't know if I had another one. Oh, wait, there was another one where it was like an old school, and I mentioned Tom, or I thought Tom too, that I think if you ever have me on again, you talk about the whole BBS scene, because
yeah.
which was So all the rage on the BBS scene used to be these games. Like I forget what it was, but it was about running a kingdom, and you have a harvest, and you have to hand it out to your fiefdoms, and it was all
Yeah.
you type in
Yes.
something, right? It
I
would roll
remember
dice
that.
and be like this many bushels of grain, you had this many bales of hay coming in, all that, and what are you going to do with it? So there was a game like that on the Commodore PET that I used to play all the time, and then it's all coming back to me right now. And then there was another one where it was, I don't know what they would call it nowadays, but it was one of those ones where you type in that you're going to go north, east, west, or south, and it would say what you're seeing, and then tell you what directions you can go in. And you would say, I want to go east. And it's like, now you're in a cave with.
Oh, yeah, that was adventure.
Yeah, an adventure gaming.
Yeah.
Text-based adventure gaming.
Yeah.
North, south, east, and west, and, attack. Defend,
look.
Whatever. And then you're dead.
Yeah. Get.
Yeah.
Get fork or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, exactly. Tim says, yeah, this is one of the first ones. Zork. Did you ever play that?
It was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
the data set. That's right. I think it was only like a couple that we had. It certainly, at least for me, wasn't the golden age of piracy that I would be introduced to in the Commodore 64 or the Amiga for that matter. So let's talk about that. Which
was the first? So you had a pet, but it was only that was only a loaner from school. But what was the first computer you got?
We never owned one. I think my dad was interested in seeing what it could do from a word processor standpoint, which from my experience and my knowledge at the time was essentially nothing. And we didn't have a printer, so it wasn't really gonna help then. So we moved on and got a ColecoVision Atom. We skipped the Trash 80 and went to the ColecoVision Atom. I'm not entirely sure why we got a ColecoVision Atom, because the ColecoVision Atom was marketed as a computer, but it was really more like a giant console because the ColecoVision was really big at the time, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It was this beast with a keyboard and a huge case with it, 2 cassette tapes, data sets, like Tim said, two of them. So this was baller, right? Because you had 2. And it came with a game called Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, or something like that, which was basically a ColecoVision game, but on the cassettes.
Yeah, wasn't the advantage of the ColecoVision that you could run the ColecoVision cartridges on the machine?
Or... It may be. I don't recall that, but it's. Yes, I think you could if you had an adapter, and you would plug that in, and then you could put the ColecoVision cassettes inside. So yes, I think you were correct. We never had a whole lot. So at some point in this area, we had an Atari 2600, and we had a bunch of cassettes from there. Because when my dad would go to Detroit, because we had to go to Detroit to buy all the records for his business, so they didn't sell them, or they didn't have the same variety, which is to be expected. I mean, it's Detroit, and so he'd be able to pick up all these Atari 2600 games there that we couldn't get. Not guess you couldn't get them in Canada, but we couldn't get them in Windsor. So the Atari was in there at some point. So we had a whole lot of like Atari cartridges, but we never really had a whole lot of Coleco ones. But the Coleco did have a daisy wheel printer.
Oh yeah, for those of you who don't remember, the first printers that come out were these monsters that were like a cross between a plotter and a Selectrix, an IBM Selectrix, because it literally had this disc that had all of the letters on it, and you'd run paper. You had to get special paper that had like holes on the side to ratchet that fit through this thing, and it came in these sheets, these accordion sheets.
But a big box.
Right?
Yeah. Feed the thing in from the back of it, and of course, it was slow as heck and loud. I mean, it sounded like what it was doing, exactly what it was doing, which is slapping the pedal of the daisy wheel right against the ribbon onto the sheet of paper. And you'd probably get, I don't know, 110, 120 pages before the letter E would snap off, rendering the entire wheel useless.
And didn't you have to ran off a ribbon, so you had to re-spool or re-ink the ribbon after a while?
Just like a typewriter. It was basically a typewriter, except instead of having the ball and the arms, it was a wheel that would spin back and forth and make a lot of noise. And I think part of I think part of why we got that was my dad's hope that he'd at least be able to start automating this process of making
Of the lists
these
from his
lists.
DJ.
Yeah. So he wouldn't have to line them up anymore. And, the dream of being able to slap a data set in there and save the file and then go back and have to do this. But he got pretty tired of replacing the daisy wheel pretty quickly. And back then, certainly more than it was now. We upgraded to a dot matrix with the Commodore, which was super fancy technology, and it didn't make slapping sounds. It made like a sound when it would do its thing, right? But back then, much less than it is now. Everything was very vertical back then, right? So the printer was meant to work with the ColecoVision Atom. That was it. You weren't going to use that printer. If you wanted a dot matrix printer for the ColecoVision Atom, which I don't even think they made them, you would have to buy one for the ColecoVision Atom, right? So even and the Commodores were like that too, if I remember right, for at least a long period of time. So we ended up. That's when we finally got the Commodore 128.
Okay.
We skipped the 64 and went right to the 128 because it had twice as much memory, which I'm pretty sure somebody told my dad was going to make it easier for him to make these lists. So it comes back to the lists, right? And it did to a certain degree, which is a different story that we can maybe touch upon. When my dad, I think, literally almost threw the thing out almost smashed the thing on the floor. He was so frustrated.
Oh no!
That's when we got that's when the true gaming renaissance started, right? And you could start copying discs off of friends and yeah, that was a great sound. That sound sounded like technology.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Like that sound sounded like you're like on a spaceship. Like it sounded like you were using a computer. Like you were doing something that not everybody was privy to being able to do. Like I love that sound too. The fact that the bubble jets and the laser jets don't make that sound is really unfortunate. And that dot matrix printer, especially compared to the daisy wheel, was like the most reliable piece of technology ever made. Like that thing the one that we had never died. It just worked. But yeah,
and you could do graphics with it. Beyond ASCII. It was a big change with dot matrix. You could actually start creating graphics and printing it out of paper.
Good point. You could, yes, yeah, you could do grayscale image printing, which was nuts. Which made even better sounds on the dot matrix when you were doing that. As when you really knew you were doing something special, right? Because it was all kinds of weird sounds. But the 128 was my dad's first ability to have a word processor, which is one of only 3 programs we actually had in the 128. I don't know how many people in the chat ever got to use a 128, but when we got it, and I'm sure that this wasn't part of the plan, we just assumed that it was cross-compatible, which it was.
I don't know if I hope I have let me bring up the
because the
screen.
Yeah, so that's the 64.
That's a 64. And that's a Click. Is that a Click?
No, that's the ColecoVision.
That's a ColecoVision.
Wow.
And that is a huge machine back there.
Core memory unlocked. I don't think Tim or somebody on the chat had mentioned this about the cassette tapes too, about how Coleco would try to sell you like these $20, which was crazy in 1986, right? A $20 data set. And my dad, of course, was like, because he had these cassettes for his DJ business, like, get out of here. No way. Like, so we would pop in the regular like $4 or $5 ones, slap them in there, and they worked just fine.
Which one did he prefer? Did he go with the Maxells or did he go with TDK?
I think it was all Maxells.
Okay.
Or Maxells, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. High oxide or whatever, the fancy ones.
Always got that for my mixtapes, right?
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, it was like, it's a magnetic tape. Like the ColecoVision Atom didn't care. But the 128, we only ever got 3 programs that were made for the 128 because the 128 actually had not special software, but if you wanted to utilize 128K of memory instead of the 64, it had to be written for the 128. So he got a word processor program for the 128 that allowed me to use all 128. But for me to play all the games on it, I think you had to hold down the Commodore key when you turned it on. And that would literally turn it into a Commodore 64. It was
so it's like it's like a dual boot.
Yeah, I think
scheme.
it may have been the world's first dual boot computer because it literally booted into the 64 chipset. And I don't even know if it's a chipset, but the 64-bit chip. But yeah, it was full on blue like a regular Commodore 64. And I think if you booted into 128, it was, somebody might remember more than I do, but it wasn't blue. It was it might have been green. I think it was green. So you would know that you're in one versus the other, or maybe I have it backwards. But there was definitely a color differential.
Now, were you still able to access that 128 K of RAM or not?
No, if you're in 64 mode, you'd only get 64. There was modules you could buy that would plug in the back of the later 64s that would get you an extra 64K, which hindsight, I mean, Commodore wasn't the sharpest company on the planet for a variety of reasons, which, is a bitter pill for me because I was a massive fan of the Amiga. Like the Amiga was so ahead of its time.
Yeah, for sure.
It did, right?
Now, we should just get into that because I didn't even know until I started getting into this was that Amiga was actually a different company, but Commodore bought them.
Yes, and it was actually started by, he ended up passing away from cancer, which was really, really unfortunate because the guy was a genius. And for whatever reason, his name is completely escaping me right now. But he had built this idea of building a triple chipset, which was revolutionary at the time. And it was a chip that would do graphics, a chip that would do audio, and a chip that would do basically everything else. And he named them Agnes, Denise, and Paula. And
were there his kids?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I don't know if there was a story behind it. I think there were stories behind it, but I don't know how much of it was just lore. So much Amiga stuff, lore came out after the fact because these Amigas are like, there's like a whole, like you said on that slide, by the way. By the way, I didn't know that Commodore was a Canadian company, so that was kind of cool. But the Speedball, by the way, freaking awesome game. That was an awesome game. The Amiga 4000, controversy. Was that really an Amiga? Was that really made by Commodore? But anyway, sorry, what was the question? I'm getting.
It was. We were just talking about the Commodore and an Amiga. I'll let you talk about it because I was more in the. I was in the rival Atari camp because at the time the attraction was that I could play cartridges on the Atari 800 and it would load up way faster than tapes.
Yes. Yeah, the Atari ST, I think, right? Which
this was before I had the 800.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was only like 48K. for all you youngins out there, these are top of the line. But the memory was just 48. It's K measured in K, not even in gigabytes.
K, yeah. which is crazy. I mean, even when we got the Amiga, again, I don't know if this was something that a salesperson did, but if he did, I'm glad the salesperson did, even though I think it came close to financially ruining my dad, I think. So again, super.
Yeah. How much was that at the time?
So we had an Amiga 2000 HD, the HD standing for hard drive. Which also was just like, oh my God.
Oh, those were crazy expensive back in the day.
Yeah, the hard drive alone was probably half the cost of the Amiga. And I think my dad told me after the fact that it was like $2,100, and this was 1994. So, I mein, what would that be nowadays? Like 4,000, 500, like a lot of money, which was insane. It had, I believe, a 20 megabyte hard drive. So, and that you're already like crushing it with 20 megabytes.
Yeah.
And I think it had maybe 4 megs of RAM, maybe 2 megs of RAM was how much RAM the Amiga had. So that's cutting edge. Right?
Yeah, that's a lot of RAM for that.
And expandable. You could expand it. You could expand it with dropping some things in there. Yeah, that's what it was. And I remember some people bought it, but circle back around real quick just to close that loop from what Tim said. I remember everybody was complaining about the fact that one of the things that killed the Commodore 128 was the fact that when Commodore came out with that expandable memory, there wasn't any reason really to get a Commodore 128 anymore because you can buy something for way cheaper and slap it on the back of your 64, and 64s were almost ubiquitous, right? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
about where you guys, where everybody on the show was, but at the school systems in Windsor and a lot of the school systems in Ontario, like Commodore 64s, those were the computers in the school. We never got Apples. They were all Commodore 64s. So
They were more affordable than the Apples. I think that's one of the reasons why they were much more common. And
yeah,
I like the games on the Commodore 64 more than the Atari, to be perfectly honest. But it was already too late. I already had it at the house, so it's not like I could switch ecosystems.
yeah, and so many games for the Commodore 64, right? Like so many. And then again, the piracy. So you had that going for you.
How easy was it to pirate games on the 64? Because it was a hardware issue on the 800. I actually went and got a pirate chipset put into the floppy drive, my floppy drive, just to be able to pirate stuff.
From my memory, there was basically nothing that would prevent you from doing it. If you had two disk drives, you had disk drive A and disk drive B, comma 1 or comma 2, if I remember right, or
Mm-hmm.
comma 8, comma 9. You would copy one disk to the other and then give it to your friend, and he would walk away. They started trying to do some going all the way back to the BBSs. They did start trying to do some of the stuff that Oregon Trail was amazing.
Yeah, Michael Dunn just commented on Oregon Trail was the game that everyone about it. Yeah, that was the first computer game that I ever got to play, and that's what sold me on home computers. Like, I want one just to play that at home.
And it's funny because those a lot of those were text-based games, and those have made a major comeback too, right? Like all the kids are like starting to play some of those. So it's how the old becomes the new. But yeah, they started trying to do things like dongles and stuff with Commodore 64s, where you plug them into the side there, like you've got there, like to authorize it and all that. But and the nibbler programs.
What are nibbler programs? So Tim Mooney is posted up the C64, the Commodore 64 used a nibbler programs to get around copy protection. What was nibbler?
I remember right, there were basic programs that you would load up, and you could go and you can modify the bits on literally like the bits that are stored in the program on the disk directly. So you basically could program assembler and machine code to go around copy protection that they would put into the games. And if I remember right, Tim, correct me, but they were like hardware devices too that you would have to use that would do it. But if someone cracked the game, I guess that's the step I was missing. To your point.
Yeah.
That Tim is so graciously bringing up. You would have to have someone that would crack the game, but once they cracked that game, you would the copying that cracked version was trivial.
Yeah.
And the Amiga, it was rampant on the Amiga as well. But what's crazy about the Amiga was because the Amiga had such an amazing chipset for audio, that it took this realm of copy protection cracking to like a whole other level of game modders and cracking guilds and all this crazy stuff, where there were groups of people from all over the world, predominantly Europe, because Amiga was really, really big in Europe. I'm not entirely sure why, but it was really, really big in Europe. I think probably because you could dual boot between NTSC and PAL on an Amiga, which was also crazy, right? Normally you would have to get like a PAL Commodore 64 or an NTSC 64. In the Amiga, you did. You held a button and it would switch.
Okay.
And they would form these guilds, and they would have when you loaded up this cracked game.
Yes,
they would have what they call demos, right?
Oh well, they have their also they would splash screen the guild's name and their logo.
So, yeah, exactly. So it's called a demo scene. It would do all these crazy graphics and crazy sound, and a lot of the crazy music that they were putting on these demos. A lot of them were precursors to where techno music and electronic music would end up, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, because they were using all of these synthesized sounds on an Amiga that you would normally have to buy like a drum machine or something to do. And they were doing it in this thing. So some of these, there's rumors that some of the people that were doing these demo scenes that were doing these splash screens ended up becoming music producers and stuff. Like you hear like someone like like Deadmau5.
Oh yeah.
That he was exposed to that. He's kind of the same age that I am, and I think he got exposed to some of that stuff.
Or some of the older guys like Fatboy Slim.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were and then the graphics as well. There were people using things like the video toaster and doing all kinds of crazy. You could do like video production on your Amiga. You get this thing with that takes in composite input. You could do green screen. You were able to do green screen with some of the things that you could do on an Amiga. And again, this is like 1996, 97, 98 in your bedroom.
Yeah, for everybody else, that was commercial stuff. And I was working in the advertising industry back then. You'd have to pay top dollar. I mean, and you'd go to these specialty computer compositing places in New York City, and I don't know how much money, but this is when they would be spending easily $60,000, $100,000 to produce a TV commercial that I'd be working on. But then those guys would be working on like $30,000 Silicon graphics workstations to be able to. Yeah. So, okay. There's an old, dating myself. For those of you youngins, there was a company called Silicon Graphics, and they had these cool purple boxes, and that cost $30,000.
Yeah. They were the bomb.
Yeah.
They were like the Industrial Light and Magic of.
That's who used them, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, like Pixar and ILM were using these really expensive workstations to do these graphics. But to your point, somebody with an Amiga that costs like $1,000 or maybe a couple of grand could be doing something that somebody that would have to spend 10, 20 times as much, but effectively get a similar result. Maybe not as high resolution, but.
No, exactly. It was definitely enough where, you had people doing video music. I'm sure Commodore paid him, but I think Todd Lundgren, for example, I think that was Todd Rundgren was a big fan. There was rumors that Billy Idol was doing it and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was, right?
Yeah. Tim's posted up that Video Toaster could do things that a $100,000 Ampex system could do. And that's true. Yeah. Absolutely true back in the 90s.
And what's crazy is you didn't have to have, it helped, but you didn't have to have an Amiga 2000 HD to do this. You could do it on an Amiga 500, right? You could do it on an Amiga 1000 because a lot of the stuff that the Video Toaster was tapping into was piggybacking off of these awesome chips that were on the Amiga that was in all these models that made Amiga what the Amiga was. But it had its own, specialized processors to do these things. But like Tim said, I mean, the stuff that people were doing with it, they were doing ray tracing, things that Pixar is doing now, obviously getting out that quality. But the fact that you could do a ray trace where you can make something, now granted it would take like 8 hours a frame, but the fact that you could actually do,
but you could do it.
You could do it. You could do it. And you couldn't do it on a PC at the time.
No, and I still don't understand how is it that Amiga just sort of cratered it compared. I mean, why would anybody buy at the time was like a 286 computer, which just crappy graphics and crappy sound. You had to add-on sound cards just to get decent sound.
Yeah, because that was the other thing that the Amiga had. I'm pretty sure it had certainly on the newer versions, it had 16-bit sound like built right in, which was nuts, right? You'd have to get it's kind of coming back to me. It's on the tip of my tongue, but like you said, Tom, you'd have to buy like there's a whole line of them, right? Like of audio I forgot the names of them now, but yeah, I had to go buy it because it was all the thing, right? Same with the video cards, right? VGA and then EVGA or EVGA, VGA, and then trying to get all these different graphic cards. And I think if I remember correctly, I know for a fact that the higher ups at Commodore ended up taking a bunch of money from the company and quite literally fleeing to Barbados. And then the company went into bankruptcy shortly after. But
they 97
it got fleeced. And it was, but to your point about how they bought the Amiga, I think part of it too was that, and I really wish I could remember the gentleman's name, but he was kind of the way that Steve Wozniak is considered to kind of be like the brain behind the Apple devices, right? Like, Steve Jobs was great at marketing it. Hopefully I'm not offending anybody right now, but Wozniak was like, he was the engineer. Yeah. And that was kind of the idea with this person as well. He was the engineer that I still have the Amiga 2000 downstairs, but I'm not an electrical engineer or a computer engineer, but I've been told by ones that they look at the circuit board of these Amigas and they're just like, this is amazing that the guy could build something like this this cleanly and this brilliantly in 1996 with the technology that they had. And I think when he passed away, they were on this realm of doing these, building up on that idea, and they weren't given the opportunity to do that. And then you've got vested business interest, right? Like you've got all these companies like Intel that are, because the Amigas use Motorola processors, right? They use the 68,000 all the way up to 68,040. And Motorola was also having issues keeping up with Intel at the time, and eventually AMD. And the whole architecture of the Amiga was built on a Motorola processor. So when the PCs started stomping on everybody, including Apple, and pushing power PCs and Intel processors and everything else, I think the Amiga just kind of found itself on the outside looking in. But, you know, somewhat interesting story that didn't end very well for me. But I had upgraded my Amiga 2000 with the 68040 processor, which was not easy. It's supposed to be, but it wasn't. Once you actually put it in there, because of the firmware version I had on my main board, you ended up having to jumper all these things on the like jumper pin 1 to pin 19 on your CPU, and jumper this and jumper that, because they were making revisions to the motherboard itself, and my motherboard was older, so it wasn't built to work with this processor. It's kind of funny to say that out loud nowadays because things don't really work that way as much. But I moved to LA and doing software engineering there. It's where I met, you know, Dustin, and we built the company together and everything else. But LA being LA, everybody else in LA is into video production, into music, into audio production, into being an actor, being an actress, whatever. One of the reasons I ended up moving back to Toronto. But Dustin's brother had a job with a sound engineer. And that sound engineer, so this is now, we're talking here 2005 at this point. The sound engineer is desperately looking for someone who just happens to know how to upgrade his Amiga to a 68040 processor, because his secret weapon apparently at his sound studio is that he was using an Amiga 2000 to do some of this crazy audio stuff that nobody could duplicate. And it's because he was doing it on this Amiga, and nobody could, like, using whatever Pro Logic or using whatever they're using at the time, couldn't do the same thing. So he got me to try to upgrade the processor, and I failed.
Oh, no, that's too bad.
Yeah, I don't even know if the Amiga ever worked again. So that kind of stuff. But I think he did get it working again. But it was crazy because I've actually heard stories as well that there are still people who are using it to do. Yeah, and using it to do. You know, this again, the fact that there's teenagers out there that are obsessed now with having a Sony digital camera from 2004, because it does things differently than the iPhone does. So yeah, but yeah, eventually though, I had to give up. I started having to. I needed to. The Amiga was neat because the Amiga introduced me to C, the programming language C, because everything on the Amiga was written in C, which looked like absolute alien stuff to someone who was used to writing in BASIC.
Oh yeah, but it makes so much more sense. You don't have to do it in a sequential line. You can
and you know, pointers and memory allocation, and you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. But in order, you know, I would start at school, and we were starting to build software companies, and everything at that point had been, you know, PC. If you weren't writing code for a 386 or a 486, like there wasn't going to be a job. So I ended up having to move to a PC with everybody else. And then, but like I said, I kept the Amiga 2000. I still have it in my basement. Can't get it to run because I don't know where the keyboard went, and I need to find either get an HDMI adapter for composite output, or find an old school TV that has a composite output on it.
Nobody makes an HDMI to composite breakout box or something.
I did end up finding one. It cost me $50, and it had to come from Europe. But I did end up finding one, and then that's when I realized I didn't have the keyboard or the mouse. And as you can see in the photo there, they were not USB. So it was also very.
Was it their proprietary, or did they use a serial mouse? Serial connection?
It was proprietary.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was a serial mouse, but it turned out it's proprietary. And there's people in Europe they do them by hand. They've
Wow.
reverse engineered them. Yeah, and obviously going over the time here, but there's a whole the end game for Amiga, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but there is a company. I don't know if they're American or if they're in Europe, but they did actually buy, hence the Amiga 4000. They did actually buy the rights and the intellectual property to Amiga.
Yeah.
So so they did come out with a new version of Amiga OS that incidentally I think runs on PC on AMD and Intel processors. But you can buy an Amiga 4000. You can buy I think there's an Amiga 5000 now if I'm not mistaken. But there's a whole section of people that will by hand build an adapter that will fit inside, translate a USB into whatever that proprietary thing was. But
So
yeah, and I guess it would have been more like serial, like you said, Tom, right? The PS2 standard would have been something that you thought that it would have used, but Amiga was doing everything their own way. So, but yeah,
those are great machines, and it's a kind of a shame that of the older sort of golden age of computers, that was the one that I thought would make it, because it had all of the graphics and sound bells and whistles that Apple would eventually get.
Yes.
Put out. And yeah, it's kind of a shame.
That was kind of the dream, right? That's what everybody who had an Amiga thought, was that it was going to outpace the Mac, and the Mac ended up as being the one that took the mantle. I mean, if you're doing audio or video, anything nowadays, you're probably using a Mac.
Yeah, like me. And I was a PC after Atari. I was a PC guy only. It's like I fought tooth and nail when I was at art school to I'm doing everything on my PC. I'm not going to buy a Mac. So I thought they were overpriced trash.
Yeah, but at least you put up the fight. It's like, but I think the Amiga, unfortunately, is in a long list of things that we all know happen. Is that it's not always necessarily the best. It's actually almost uncommon for the best technology to actually win. It ends up being who markets it better. And of course, like I said earlier, there was other factors, I think, with the technology and everything else being what it was. But took a little while for the PC to catch up. But at the same time, I mean, now we're doing this. I mean, who would have thought that when you're using your Commodore PET that we would be live streaming, with people all around the world, me sitting here outside Toronto, you in San Francisco, talking to people in, France in real time and doing all of our coding remotely, running a software company where I've got developers in Chicago, in LA, in Toronto, in France, in all these different parts of the world, and we're all communicating on platforms. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing where everything's on. So my dad was right.
It's the wave of the future.
Yeah, he's still disappointed no flying cars, but I mean, I guess we'll get there eventually, probably.
Well, soon enough. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten into drones.
I'm surprised he hasn't either, actually. I'm actually really surprised he hasn't.
Maybe considering how much money you can throw down into that rabbit hole, maybe you shouldn't mention it.
Yeah, I don't think it's probably. I think there's been a certain degree, as my dad's, in retirement, of probably trying to be a little bit more careful about what hobbies he takes on, because some of this stuff can get pretty. I mean, any hobby can, right?
Yeah.
Like it's good once you're in a hobby. It's like I saw some of your. By the way, I was on your YouTube, your YouTube page.
Uh-huh.
And I am going to watch whatever that TMI is that you have there with Aphex Twin and Accidents, because just the picture that you have on there alone of James.
Yeah, because that's what I also, one of the early ones I discovered, that even just a little sound snippet will cause YouTube to demonetize, or I can't claim anything for that video, or in some cases they'll won't let me play that song because the copyright holder won't won't let me.
Yeah. If you can, before we have to get off, before maybe I don't know how long this thing goes, but you mentioned that earlier, and I'm actually fascinated by that statement because you mentioned something about that with one of the reviews you were doing. I think the thermals, that if you say something or you do something that you would be monitored. What does that mean? Does that basically mean that your video will no longer be able to get ads on it because you've mentioned a copyright or something?
Here's the thing is, okay, so I think it's more if I show a thermal device, and especially if I show through the CRT, through the screen of the thermal in use. But what they'll do is, one, it won't allow me to get a cut of the ad revenue of the ads they post on it, and they also claim that because of the controversial content of it, they can't. Most advertisers won't allow their ads to be played on it, which is okay, fine. But I gotta wonder, does that mean that their algorithm will just intentionally suppress that video? Because if they're not getting any money for it, why would they promote it?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah. So it's just the case that I see some of the videos that I know, some of my older videos where they do say that this is not available for ad revenue, that those videos tend to have less views than the ones that had. So,
and of course they don't tell you why. Right?
No, it's a black box, and at YouTube, it's like I have nobody to talk to over there or answer questions.
It's remarkable. Probably a whole other TMI conversation, but the work that we do in software, the nightmare that it's become trying to create accounts for publishing apps on Google Play is absolutely outrageous. And I'm sure the EU has something to do with that.
I would like to talk to you about that in some other TMI for sure.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, we had one customer, and they make you do all this verification stuff. And we're still not entirely sure what happened. I think maybe we uploaded the front of their driver's license and then accidentally uploaded the back of her husband's or something. And they were like, yeah, you failed verification. And we're like, okay, how do we fix that? And they're like, oh, are you disputing it? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't really know what I did wrong. So yeah, I guess we're going to dispute this. Let's do it. And they're like, okay. So they send it to a team, and the team emails back. And this is all taking 2 days at a time, right?
Yeah.
And then Matthew comes back to me from the dispute team, and Matthew's like, yeah, we looked at your dispute, and there's nothing we can do for you. And I'm like, well, can I see the dispute? Because I haven't seen the dispute. You just said that we failed verification. So I don't really know what's going wrong here, but I'm sure if you tell me what went wrong, or maybe if you even do something like really crazy, like just say, we're going to kill the account, you got to start over. I'm sure we can figure this out, and I'll upload the correct photo of the other 18 that I had to upload. And then they just ignore you.
Yeah.
So that account is basically just dead. And it's got someone's driver's license on it, and they never told us what went wrong, and they're not going to tell us how to fix it. And so we just started another one with somebody else's name and made sure that we put the right front and back on it. And the next day they're like, yeah, you're good to go. And we're just like, but they're like that with everything. It's absolutely, the whole monopoly thing and everything else. It's just.
Tim Mooney just made an Animal House reference.
The best part about this is what's going to happen, because anybody who's been through this knows what's going to happen. What's going to happen is I'm going to start getting emails 6 months from now telling me that I have a dormant account, and if I don't do something with it, that they're going to close it. Meanwhile, I already tried to close it, and get this, they won't let me close it. You know why they won't let me close it?
Why?
Because it's not verified. So I'm like, well, yeah, I know. That's the whole problem.
We're not. Yeah. When you ever deal with Google or their empire, it's a total Kafka-esque situation.
Yeah, it really is. That's exactly it. It's like that onion thing of going into Kafka International Airport. Have you ever seen that one?
No.
It's absolutely brilliant. And it is. It's exactly what working in Google is like, or working with Google or any of them. And the shame is that, as I don't know how, anybody who's grown up with the internet, it wasn't like that before. Even with Google, it wasn't. Like 10 years ago. They were very, very open, probably too open, granted, but they were definitely, they had processes, and you could talk to somebody and they'd be like, yeah, whatever, we're going to cancel it and start over and do all that. And as they've gotten bigger, or as they just stopped caring, the whole thing with Epic, right? Was it Epic Games that was going after them about having to sell games through the store, and with Apple and everybody else trying to do subscriptions, getting a cut, locking things into these app stores, and how monopolistic it is absolutely true. It's like, you would never expect a world as a software developer, as a software publisher in the 90s and 2000s, that if you wanted to sell a game, that you're going to have to go through one of two essentially clearinghouses. They're going to take up to 20% of your sale in order for you to go to a captive audience to sell your software to. It's absolutely insane. Like, where's capitalism here?
Yeah.
How is this possible? But I digress. I go down. That's a whole other rabbit hole. But yeah, if you ever want to talk about publishing software and everything in the year 2025, it is a trip. I've done it with 4 or 5 different companies.
Oh, I definitely want to talk to you about it. Let's put a pin on that. Let's use that as the next topic. But I know that you have dinner that you have a hard stop for, and I just got a phone call from Giselle. Maybe she's asking me to pick her up from the BART station. I don't know, but I'll call her in a minute. But so let's wrap up.
Yeah.
And let me just move through my slides here. I just want to end this episode with our contest, which I want to give everybody the final set of clues here. So this the mystery company in 1986, sadly, as we were talking earlier, at the time in 1986, this was the largest home computer producer. It was ahead of Apple, IBM, Dell, and at the time the biggest rival was Atari in the home gaming computer market. But despite this, in 1996, they declared bankruptcy and dissolved. So there's your clue. Wanted to also let people know, as far as contests go, I just got an email about a contest being sponsored by Aguila Ammunition, and they are putting together Plinko de Mayo. So that's a great name, Plinko de Mayo. So May is coming, and Cinco de Mayo is coming. So they're encouraging everybody to take videos of you going to the range and hopefully using Aguila ammo, and upload your videos and tag it with Aguila ammo, and you can get a chance to win an Aguila swag bag of I'm sure they have a whole line of apparel too that I did a video visit with, and some really nice, some bougie, nice European styled leather goods and things on their store. Maybe that's included in there, but it's a $500 swag bag from Aguila. So I'm just letting you know, I don't get a cut or any kind of referral on this. So, and also for YouTube, if the overlords there are watching this, I am not promoting Aguila ammo or the purchase of it, and you cannot purchase it from my website. I'm just mentioning that they have this cool contest, and I love the name Plinko de Mayo.
Yeah.
And I do have a contest where I am giving away a bubble level, an attachable bubble level for your scope. And the contest ends next week. So be sure to get your contest entries in to my website. And I will post up, let me put a link in the side chat here for that contest. And all you have to do is subscribe to my travel channel, Moondog Go, and upload proof that you have to my website. And I've just posted a link on the side chat here. And if you are just watching or listening to this later and can't see the side chat, go to moondogindustries.com/contest, and you'll find links to whatever current contest I have there to the actual contest page where you can upload your screenshots. And my winner will get this bubble level. And here's the final clue. This is their logo. This is that company, the mystery company's logo on the side. So get your hashtag for this mystery company. All right. I'm going to load up the contest screen, and we're going to draw the winners for this contest. Hold on a second here. Okay, we have 5 entries. Scott, give me a quick countdown and I will hit the draw button.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, we'll see who gets the first one of these Loophole swag packs. Tim, thank you for all of your comments today as well.
Thank you, Tim. That was awesome.
Oh, I am having a hard time hitting this screenshot button. Okay, there we go. Now, let's draw again. Give me a quick countdown again.
All right, I'm going to go from 3. 3, 2, 1.
All right. Michael Dunn, you are the second winner of the swag pack from Loophole. And give me one more countdown and we'll draw the third and final winner.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Pick. Congratulations, Pick. Thanks for... Oh. That was... Okay, there we go. Congratulations, Pick.
If you're using Amiga, would be able to handle that.
I actually hit the wrong tab. I'm like, what happened there? And that's the reason. And so I am... make sure that you email me at my... email address with your mail to information for the winners out there, and put the hashtag answer on the subject line so that I can easily find it on my Gmail. But I want to thank our special guest Scott for joining us today and just reminiscing about the golden age of PCs with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, and thank you to everybody for the interaction as well. That was really cool. It's This is a great experience. So thank you again for having me. Awesome.
And I really do want to have you come back because I would love to talk to you about software publishing as well as getting into trouble while visiting Detroit or anything.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
I'd love to.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and I hope you got something out of this. Let me know if you have any questions for Scott, and as always, you can always check my show notes, including a link to Scott's software company. Let me just put up a link to the show notes on the side there for everybody to watch. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to tune in next Wednesday for my next live stream. We're going to have a special guest from the Hot Pot. I'll clue you in a little later in the week for everybody who's watching. Anyway, thanks again, Scott. Everybody, have a good Wednesday, and you be safe out there. Moondog, out. Hey, I'd like to know what you thought of this video. Leave me a comment or chat with me on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, MeWe, Instagram, or Locals. And if you want to see all of my videos, go to moondogindustries.com.